Welcome everybody to a very, very special That Helps No One championship finale and award show with our good friend Jim Coventry. This, as I said, is That Helps Nobody or No One. That helps no one. Everyone, thanks for coming. This show is the binding agent that brings us all together. I'm not sure if anyone got that. But we're ready to get into the fantasy football show. I mean, Jim probably has a few more listeners, but we have a special niche, a little niche area that people tune in, and we have a tweet proving that. And I'm just going to bring that up quickly, you guys. This show without Always 94, that's me. I would have never started the running back I drafted in the first round, Najee Harris, longtime listener, first time tweeter, world's okayest fantasy football advice. You guys. I brought it week one. I said, you got to start Najee Harris. He hadn't played yet. So, clearly, I think I was the reason that this show has been such a huge success. But first and foremost, we'll get to our guest, Jim Coventry from Rotowire and SiriusXM. Jim, thank you again for coming to the marquee show of our season. We appreciate you.
Very happy to be here. Love hanging out with fun people and who know football, and so that's why we're here.
This is the reason we joined together. Chris, good to see you. Things look different over on your side, but it's not a picture, and it's not the beard I was trying to figure out. Things are going to get a little bit lighter there, I think.
It's a little, the light is on. Suddenly, I'm seeing clear. It's just brighter over here. It really helped. Make me make that final push to the fantasy finals this past week.
Yeah, thanks for figuring that out in semifinal week, you dick.
It's just such a perfect present. It came a week late, but we all love it.
I am your kryptonite, Ted.
It's not even a lie. It's 100% fact.
I know this song. I know.
Sorry, not sorry, Ted.
That would be the hit song from Three Doors Down.
Some backstory there, Jim. I obviously knocked out Ted again in the semis this week for, what is it now? The third time I've knocked you out of the semis, Ted?
So it's the third. So I haven't made playoffs every year because I usually do like a 1-up, 1-down thing, but it's the third year making playoffs that I've got to buy in week one to be knocked out in the semis by Chris.
Oh, ouch. So when you have that buy in the future, you got to tank the last game or two so you fall to a wild card spot. Because, yes, the buy is not serving you well.
No, not true. Not true. I've won and lost the game too. So.
I have to know, Ted, which one hurt the worst? Was it the perfect season?
Oh, it's easily the perfect season. Yeah. Just ask the Patriots.
Oh, perfect season, and you lost in your first playoff game.
Yeah, and it wasn't even close, Jim. Like it was.
No,
it was bad. He beat me by like 60 points. That one too. It was bad.
This was like probably the greatest. So we're in a 12-man league, all of us, and this was the greatest team I've ever seen assembled in a 12-man league. Like there is
standard
999,999 times out of a million, Ted is going to win against any other team I've ever seen. It was one of the most devastating losses I've ever seen, and I bring it up every single year.
The story gets better this year. I love it. Steve, welcome to the show, my friend.
Hey, thanks for having me back, guys.
In your new digs there, how's that feeling for you?
New digs. It Chris wasn't lying. It's actually brighter over here in the west side. I don't know if you can see over like my screen here, but like lights are literally brighter over here.
I mean, your camera is pointed at the light, so that's probably a good starting point for you. So I mean, it's brighter for us. I don't know if it's the same for you, but tough to say.
Beautiful.
Boys, let's quit the pleasantries. Let's get right down to business. We're going to recap our sleepy starts. We didn't bother with the ads last week. Jim, did you see this one last time?
I did.
Okay. So it's been around for a few weeks.
Yes.
Lovely. Okay. So first and foremost, Ted, let's recap your sleepy start last week.
Sleepy starts last week. Let me look at it here because I just lost it.
It's some Justin guy.
Oh yes, Justin Jackson, something like that. Yeah. That was the dude. Monster week. I think that's two weeks in a row that I had like a massive sleepy start week. And I don't know how sleepy this was, but I think at the time he was only owned in something like 2% of leagues. So our boy Jackson goes off for I think it was like 25 points or something like that. Like a ridiculous amount of the ridiculous amount of the touches in that game. I think next year I'm going to completely avoid that run game because I don't know what's going on with it week to week. But if you started Jackson this week, then it might have been a guy to push you over the top to win your matchup.
Excellent. Chris, who did you have as your sleepy start last week?
Yeah, again, I didn't write down the numbers from last week and why I had him as my sleepy start, but my guy was Amon-Ra St. Brown, which, if I remember correctly, the week prior, his numbers were pretty low. Actually, the only reason I started him in the quarterfinals was because Allen Robinson ended up on the COVID list. But this past week, he went 9 catches for 91 yards and a touchdown. So solid 17 points from Amon-Ra St. Brown. I don't know, guys. Late in the season, I seem to have finally figured out who these sleepy starts actually are.
And at a convenient time, too, against one said Teddy on the bottom there. So, I mean, not only did you have an amazing sleepy start, but you utilized it to its full potential and shamed Ted into first-round loss for himself. Sucks. That really sucks. I told you guys to go and get after Tyler Johnson because, things were not looking so great in Tampa. He had zeros across the board. I had as many fantasy points as Tyler Johnson did. So I figured I had a shot, and I didn't. And I'll get into that a little bit later in the show.
I actually listened to Ryan, and I started Tyler Johnson, who put up 0, and I still beat Ted.
Ouch. Ouch.
So
wound salt, bro.
Just like what, I can do this without you kind of win.
Actually, fun fact, I actually started 2 guys who posted 0s.
Is it that fun though? I don't know.
Your team sucks.
It was fun. It was fun for me.
That's awesome. And finally, I know Steve was MIA last week. Apparently he's moving or something. But he who would you have started? Who would have been your sleepy start? This is absolute crap. This is in Najee Harris territory.
I don't really have a sleepy start. I maybe call it Ian Book. I was behind Ian Book actually. I tweeted that in our group.
He said I would have started Mahomes in the semis. That doesn't count.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if we're getting into that part, here's an early question for Jim. Now, I won't out who it is, but it's pretty obvious which one of us did this. When you're in fantasy football playoffs, do you tinker with your lineup, or do you let the your fantasy football studs that got you there? Do you start those guys without fail, no matter what, or do you tinker with your lineup?
I try not to tinker. It has to be a really exceptional circumstance. A marginal starter, yes. But if there are any one of my core players that have been performing all season, I mean, let's say, for instance, if you got Nick Chubb in a bad matchup, not benching him. He could be playing the best run defense on the planet, but I can't bench him. So marginal players, yes, because those aren't the core players. They're players I may have switched if I have a good enough bench. But I'm not going to take a dicey bench guy. It would really have to be a strong option for me to do that. So, yeah, for the most part, no, you got to really ride the stars. Quarterbacks could be a little dicey. There could be a situation with a quarterback where if you have a good backup where you could make that move. But aside from quarterback, not really.
What about like the guys?
Maybe you should give him a little context before you throw my dicey start in there.
Oh, don't call yourself. Okay, so Ted did the ultimate tinkering, and he took out Patrick Mahomes to put in Matthew Stafford. Now, I would say that Stafford has been good all year, but it's one of those things like, why do you tinker with your lineup? And I didn't even say this to Ted because I wanted him to feel the full wrath if it backfired on him, because I've done it before.
Stafford? Are you an idiot?
Guys,
over Patrick Mahomes, who was one of his keepers.
Can you bail me out here on how not stupid this is, please, Jim?
Yeah, I totally can. Patrick Mahomes, I can't. No, I totally can bail you out in this one because I was advising people to be careful. Patrick Mahomes after like week 3, he had the first 2 good games. They both were against the Raiders. That Chargers game, he was going to put up like another terrible game. He had 170 yards and no touchdowns near the end of the third quarter. But Derwin James goes out. And then all of a sudden, the whole middle of the field is open. So Kelsey and everybody goes nuts. It was another terrible game for Mahomes. He didn't have a good game in 2 months other than against the Raiders and that one quarter where things just went his way. And to me, he has been figured out. It's just, but last week, the passing yards weren't great. He did get touchdowns. Very, very weird game last week. But based on his body of work, he has not been a good quarterback this year. He has not been a strong QB1, again, other than those Raiders games in the first 2 weeks before teams started playing the too high shell. Like I talked in our last show, we were on with Metcalf. The same thing killed Patrick Mahomes. So, no. And Stafford had a really good matchup because the Vikings, that game should have been a shootout, and the scoring got up there. It just got up there in a weird way.
So I guess
you're killing the vibe here, Jim.
I'm vindicated. I feel vindicated.
But yeah, that's a question I dealt with like during the week. It was the Mahomes question. And again, body of work, he was not an auto start. As I said, quarterback's the one position that I would if I had a second option. And reasonably, Mahomes could have put up another one of those 180 yards and 1 or 0 touchdowns. He had 5 games with 0 or 1 touchdown.
Yeah, versus a guy that ended up finishing the rear ranked ahead of him in quarterback scoring. I didn't think it was a bad matchup against what looked like to be a shootout. So I'm just sometimes you flip a coin and it ends up coming up shit.
Sorry for killing the vibe, but I would have probably done the same thing.
It actually brings me to another question. I was listening to one of your shows today on SiriusXM, and you were talking about obviously championship weekend and starting Jonathan Taylor and kind of the risk associated with that. We know that Carson Wentz is probably going to be out. The NFL just changed their COVID policies, so there might be a squeaky way in there. I haven't looked into that, but you'd mentioned all 5 of the offensive linemen for Indy are going to be either out or in question, like serious doubt of being out. So is this one of those times that like maybe you bench the best fantasy football player of the year potentially, or do you not tinker with it?
I think Taylor's floor, I think in that scenario, he would catch 7 passes. I think they would screen him the ball to get him out in space. So I think that I would not bench him. If all 5 linemen somehow are out, I guess if I had somebody like James Conner, and I know he's dinged up, there could be a world where I considered it if all 5 linemen were out, but it'd be that and no quarterback. That devastating. Then at that point, there wouldn't be holes to run it. Because Taylor is great, but he's got one of the best run blocking lines in the league. The two together are the perfect marriage. So, if all 5 were down, if there was a great option, it would be a consideration.
Interesting. I've been burned so many times, regular season or playoffs where you bench one of your, elite level players and you lose and you're like, why in the hell did I do that? And I always go back to the thing that if I roll with the guys that got me there and they just crap the bed on that last game and I lose a championship because of that, I can live with that.
Yes.
What I can't live with is like benching Jonathan Taylor and he goes off for like 35 points and I'm like, what? I know what I was thinking, but what was I actually thinking there?
Like, why do we overthink it? Why do we overthink it? You probably get this question a ton. How does it get to the point where, because this isn't just the 4 of us and not yourself, like this is every single year. We all do this.
We're afraid to lose. And we think that we're going to get that floor game. And we don't want that player to underperform in the big spot. And sometimes it's such an emotional and passionate game. Sometimes being objective is very difficult. I want to add one last thing about Taylor for Steve. So early in the season, remember the Colts line wasn't solid because they had guys out, guys coming back from injury. They were a mess. Taylor's first 5 games, 56 yards, 51 yards, 64. He had a 103 and a 53. Then the line was healthy, and it was 100-yard games and all but 2. But he was not a good fantasy running back through week 5.
I wouldn't hate seeing a 56-yard game from Jonathan Taylor this week. Not at all.
This is also playing him this week.
Okay. I do want to remind everybody, you can comment on our YouTube page on the BallHawks, their Facebook page. I don't think we have a Facebook. We're not there. We're not there yet. We have a YouTube. So if you guys want to comment on there, get in on the chat, obviously make sure you go over to YouTube. That helps no one FantasyCast, and we are definitely there. Obviously the boys, their YouTube and their Facebook, and those comments will show up here. And I think on the Blundell Twitch page as well. So by all means, get in on there. We will make sure that we get to your questions. This is going to be the last one. So again, if you have a question as well, be patient. We will answer it. We do have stuff that we want to get to as well in here. So without further ado, I've revamped some stuff. We are now getting to the main segment, but then we got awards, so that's going to be fun. But the main segment is upon us. It's time for... That Helps No One Stars. You want to see that again?
Sorry,
look how great that is.
Who has time on their hands?
Pardon me?
I said, who has time on their hands?
Brady.
Yeah, I have a week off.
Literally has time on his hands.
I have a week off. What can I say? First and foremost, my guy, Ted. I know you watched every single game this week, and you really broke it down. Who was your Thanos for this week?
My THNO this week was Dare Ogunbowale.
And I spelt it wrong in the video clip, too, just so you know.
Yeah, let me just... Man, I don't know what's going on with my computer. I got bounced again here. You might have to pass it along here. Hang on. Go to the next person here. Sorry.
Okay. Chris, we'll start with you. Who was your Thanos this week?
All right. So we're going down to Atlanta. They've got this tight end that everyone's talking about, this rookie tight end. He's 128 yards away from breaking Mike Ditka's all-time rookie tight end receiving record. But that's not the tight end we're talking about this week. We're talking about Hayden Hurst.
Fakes. He fires for the end zone. Hayden Hurst, and that's a Falcon touchdown. Kyle Pitts gets him down there, and the other tight end hauls it in for 6.
And the other tight end holds it in for 6.
The other tight end. Oh my gosh.
Nice throw, nice catch. Great spike, but that helps no one.
Wrong guy. Absolutely wrong guy.
Man, talk about Kyle Pitts, hey? He would be having an absolute monster season if he had more than one touchdown.
He had a quarterback,
right? He's almost talking about everyone's Julio's gone. He's really gonna fill in that Julio Jones role. Well, yeah, no kidding. We thought it would mean more touchdowns though. Took it too much to heart.
Catches don't mean a lot. Ted, you got everything queued up?
Yeah, I'm back logged on now.
Okay. Welcome back. Welcome back. You never left us, but you kind of left us. Who's your Thanos this week?
Thanos this week is Dare Ogunbowale. So James Robinson's out, blowing up his Achilles. I can tell you firsthand that sucks. It's absolutely brutal. But Ogunbowale steps in. He racks up 13.5 points, 70 total yards, plus the TD. And for some extra Thano incentive, this was his first TD in 2 seasons as a Jag. So go ahead and roll a clip.
Goal. Here's Ogunbowale, and he bangs it in. And Jacksonville will have a chance to tie.
I thought I had scored in 2 years. That's the TD dance that I was going to do.
Very lackluster play too. Just kind of little
was quick, beautiful. Run. I thought it was just so beautiful.
Just quick run in there. Yeah, I had Robinson, and I was wondering. I hadn't really been paying attention. I looked, what's going on here? Oh, Achilles. Oh, my week's done. Although, to be fair, I think I had one guy over double digits this week. So it was a pretty rough week for Ryan in the first overall semifinals. So I will probably be around a third overall pick this year in Whistleblower. So by all means, Trader Ryan's open for business. Might need to move up, folks. Might need to move up. Steve, who was your Thanos this week?
What a great segue, Ryan, because not only do I not have my first round pick, but I have someone else's first round pick who is battling for said first overall pick. So I will be picking ahead of you. And I made the playoffs. Suck it. And hope you're doing well. Playoffs.
Keep
going for first
keep
overall.
that around. Hey, welcome to the playoffs.
Yeah.
Here for a short time, not a long time.
Anyways, my Thanos is I've been on the 1-1-1 train. Wouldn't this week be no different? It kind of just fell into my lap. Not as good as a different O lineman that scored for me, but 6'8", 305-pound offensive lineman for the Jets. Number 69 in your program, number 1 in your hearts, Connor McDermott.
Wow.
Borden, the fullback, is in. Fake from Wilson. Here they come. Wilson to the end zone. It is caught. Touchdown. Connor McDermott. Going airborne for the Jets.
And what a catch.
Yeah, Big Man's got hands.
That's a nice play. Yeah.
Like he
The
really
reach.
had to go up and get that thing, and he had to get some open space because Zach Wilson had to scramble out. So clearly he was an eligible receiver. It wasn't just one of those ones where the whole line collapses on him and they just kind of like shovel dump it over top, and the guy is like on his knees, like, "Oh God, don't drop this!" Oh,
Like the cradled baby.
yeah. He actually makes this like stretched out catch. Connor McDermott, what a catch. 1 yard, 1 catch, 1 touchdown. That's been my theme. And man, I love O-linemen that score. They're just so jacked up about it. Like it's like the first goal in any sport you ever scored as a little kid. You're just like, holy, like I'm a pro now.
What's better? Is it the O lineman scores with like the nice hands play in the end zone, or is it when the big man gets the football and rumbles like 30 yards down the field? Like what's better?
How many times in an O lineman's career is he going to get a play alone where he's an eligible receiver to score a touchdown?
I think it's more impressive seeing the big man catch the ball.
Yeah.
Jim,
Like
what do you
that-
think? What's your call?
Catching the ball because their athleticism, because we know that the NFL players, they can, even the linemen, they can run for a little bit. They get tired after maybe 15 yards, but when they elevate like that catch, that was some ball skills.
Yeah. You see at the end of the clip there, the guy with like the Hulk hands, and that's what I envision when I look at an O lineman, right? So but he comes down like so soft, just silky, like it was. I mean, that guy looks like he could be a legit tight end. It's hilarious.
Don't be surprised if you see him get a few looks next game just because it's the Jets, and it might have to anyway. So, finishing off our Thanos segment is myself. As I said, Tyler Johnson would have been a nice pick to get you some yards last week. Antonio Brown was back because football trumps apparently everything, even morals and all that sort of thing. But didn't really matter. They were making the playoffs, winning the division. But that's not the guy that did the damage. It was one Keyshawn Vaughn, and I know you didn't start him because I checked. Pretty low ownership, and you may start him next week. But you know what? Dude's got some skills. Let's roll that clip.
3-player in Marpet, Division 2 player in Jensen, Division 2 player in Kappa. And breaking tackles, it's Keyshawn Vaughn. Down the sideline, nice move, twisting Hartsfield around and into the end zone for the touchdown.
And what a move to circle this defense. They finally, because they lined up in the beginning, they started to get these defensive ends creeping in just a little bit. And you're going to see them hit it and bounce outside, because these defensive ends are expecting some interior runs because they set it up on the first drop.
Matt, like the little stiff arm there, he knew he was gone too. He just
The old R2 stiff arm.
Exactly. Yeah, he just had to time it right, and he had it. He had pay dirt, no problem. So, yeah, a nice little 55-yard scamper with the touchdown. Absolutely helped no one. So. You could maybe ride that train and maybe you'll get some points next week. But we all know that usually lightning doesn't strike twice. So just saying. Jim, did you tell anybody to start Keyshawn this past week?
Did not. I'll tell you a couple of those Thanos players though. Isaiah McKenzie. Nobody could have used him. He had 11 for $125 and a touchdown and 12 targets. I don't know that he was rostered in many leagues.
I think
huge stat line.
I think the Bills fan in our league picked him up. But
makes sense.
That's true.
Right?
Not ballsy enough to start him though.
No way. No way.
I'd have to check. But again,
I
a
think
Bills fan would, right? I think
Yeah.
he did.
I know he did because I was watching that one. So I got bounced from my playoff because garbage time Josh Allen decided to throw a touchdown pass to garbage time Gabe Davis for his second one of the week. And that was probably like a 16-point swing, and I lost by 14 points. And it was like 4th and 7 or something like that. Like it wasn't even like a 3rd and goal or something like that. It was a 4th down play. The Bills were up by 11 with like 2 minutes left to go. They were winning the game, and they threw a damn touchdown. And I was like, "Are you serious? Like, even if Allen threw it to anyone else, I would have been saved." Nope.
But just because one guy in our league started them, I doubt very many others did.
He was the only guy on NFL.com that started. You're looking for that point one, like you can pinpoint our league. It's like deep bench. Yeah, that seems like an eligible player. Before we get into our awards, I did have this in here. Jim, I got a hair in my mouth, so that was disgusting. Full disclosure.
I wonder where that came from.
I don't know. You're always giving everybody advice, almost as much as us, clearly. But when you get to this time, now it's a week later than normal this season, but what would be like if you had, I don't know, 3 to 5 like keys to winning a championship? You've gotten this far. Maybe there's some musts. Is there like any waivers that you go out there? Like, are you still scrounging the waiver wire? Are you looking for ads? Like what kind of advice could you give to our viewers that, maybe will help them even this late in the season?
This year specifically, you have no idea which players are going to pop up on the COVID list between today through Sunday morning. So whatever bench spots you have, if you find a player who you may reasonably put in your lineup over one that's on your roster and you wouldn't consider starting that player, put that player on your squad. Whatever you could do to pad that roster up, and don't go in to roster lock like without a second quarterback. If you use kicker leagues, a second kicker, because again, if you don't have time, unless you have time to swap it out, but just make sure you're covered, because you don't want to take a 0 if at all possible. That's a big one for this year more than any other year, because even last year with COVID, it really didn't impact weekly lineups. There weren't starter players missing games.
No.
Things got played, right? So that's the first one. And then the waiver wire, look, when there's a few teams left, it's as much about creating depth for your team as it is keeping a player away from someone else. If you're able to keep a player and you look at your opponent's roster and you're quicker to the waiver wire, or you have a higher priority than them and you think they may be looking for a particular player, stash the player. Trey Lance may be an idea for that this week. At quarterback, if you need him, or if your opponent needs him, his rushing floor could be 100 yards in this game. Houston can't stop the run. And in this case, that's a player you may want to block someone on or use them.
I remember I did that a couple of years ago in a finals. My opponent had Todd Gurley the year that he missed championship week. And as a site ran to the waiver wire and picked up, was it Daryl Henderson was his backup or whoever it was? I was just like, I don't need him. I'm just going to put him on my bench. Yeah. Roster block.
Yes, it's gamesmanship, and it's fine. It's within the rules. You're not doing anything illegal, immoral, unethical. You're adding a player to your team, and there's nothing wrong with doing that. And we talked about this earlier, don't get too cute. There are occasional rare circumstances where you have a decision that just goes beyond the parameters of normalcy. But other than that, start your players who are your best players, the ones that have carried you all season. regardless of matchup, those players should be good enough to be able to perform. They could get a 0, but most of the time, your good players are going to put up something. And so you go with them because we've seen it time and again, even in bad matchups, these players still can have ceiling games.
Yeah, that's sage advice, people. If you happen to be in this week in a chance to win your trophy, listen to this man. Don't listen to us. We might have got you a week here or there. Maybe not even a week. Maybe just some extra points. Jim knows what he's talking about, and that's why we brought him in. We're gonna hold him hostage and take all of his knowledge.
So, Jim, can I bend your ear for a second?
Always.
I have one real roster spot that I'm struggling with this week. Everything else is pretty well set, but I'm struggling between 4 guys. So I've got Chase Claypool, who hasn't been great this year. Allen Robinson has been awful. Gerald Everett and Elijah Moore. I'm leaning Claypool because he's been the guy that I've always rolled with Claypool.
Now, Elijah Moore or Elijah Mitchell, do you mean? Because Moore's on the IR.
So
Probably
what I'm reading
Moore,
is that he should be coming back this week.
Okay, I guess it's possible. If he does play, we'll put it that way. If he plays,
Yeah.
So first of all, Everett's interesting because Detroit's given up at least 40 yards to 12 different tight ends this year. Everett's had 60 yards in 2 straight games, and he scored in 3 of his last 5. He has become the short game option for Russell Wilson. He had that one game against San Francisco where he had 2 big fumbles, and they kind of punished him the next game, lowered his snap share, but he got it right back the following week. So out of those guys, funny enough, if Moore plays, Moore's got to be in. All right, so right there, after what we saw him do the last 5 weeks he played, he is already in that dynamic territory that I thought that Zach Wilson could hinder him. He can't. Moore is that good. So Moore is an auto start. Claypool, the problem is he is the receiver with the higher depth of target. He'll see 10 yards downfield, whereas Deontay sees about 7. Well, Cleveland's going to bring a pass rush. Myles Garrett's there. So they're more than ever going to need those short passes. So Claypool, that longer downfield that Ben can't throw anyway, it's worse this week. So, and they've been lowering Claypool's route participation. In the last few weeks, his snaps have gone down and his routes have gone down. Very interesting and strange. I think there's a maturity issues they're trying to deal with there. And Allen Robinson, he said he lost 10 pounds during his sickness. And he hasn't been good all year. So if he plays, I don't think he's nearly back to full health. And since he hasn't done anything this year, I think 68 yards is his best game. So I think you go Elijah Moore if healthy. If not, I say Gerald Everett. He's going to get targets and the matchup is pristine.
It's funny too, because both Everett and Moore in the last 4 or 5 weeks are those guys that we thought they were going to be at the start of the year. And it took until the end of the year for them to be properly utilized. So yeah, that's pretty cool. That's interesting.
Thank you.
I hope you make the wrong start though, Chris, just saying.
Come on. Do we really want our first back-to-back champion in this league?
Nobody wants anything like that, but my hands are tied.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's get it. We'll ask Jim a few more questions. We want to keep the awards as quick as possible because, again, we're not that exciting. So we had some good advice, not great advice. So our first award is this one. Best start.
Well, that's faux pas. Eyes forward at all times, boys.
Don't pee in the middle urinal then. If there's empty urinals, don't pee in the middle one. That's
it still doesn't matter. Still doesn't matter. That's like faux pas. That's like a level below. Like faux pas number 1 in the urinals is eyes forward. Faux pas number 2 is if there's an empty stall, take the furthest one away. Like you don't need to be creepy about it, but it's always eyes forward first.
And we actually don't know because the guy that showed up first could have been the guy that showed up on the far right. We don't know.
Maybe
we'll never know.
No, we don't know.
Faux pas. Then if there's 3 and you're the first, then you take the middle one.
Yeah,
I don't know why that scene reminded me of Harold and Kumar, the girls in the bathroom of Battleship. I'm going to call it Battleship because they call it something else. I thought of that because I wanted a more pleasant thought to go with than that.
Oh, man. That has apparently been living in my brain rent free, and I didn't even know it.
It took a turn. I didn't know this was going to happen, and I don't really know why that picture was picked. It just looked funny enough that that's what we went with. So we'll start with me. So my best start was clearly after week 1. You guys, I told you to start Najee Harris. I'm just kidding. My best start this week was Russell Gage, week 13. He had 130 yards. At the time, he was owned in 15.2% of leagues. And my best ad would have been Gabriel Davis, who again has turned up late in the season. So, I mean, it's the Buffalo Bills. There's fun to be had all around the league. But yeah, Russell Gage would have been mine. So, Steve, who was your guy? Who got it done for you?
Well, I found some stuff out about myself. I don't like putting stuff into the Google Docs, and I have a really bad memory, so my options were quite limited here. I did say back in our 3rd episode to start Van Jefferson. I don't think it was a home run hit to start him, but if you did add him through that start, I would say that's a home run. But my best one was probably Rashad Bateman. In our episode 13, it was the first time he went over 100 yards. Only 8.3% of people had him rostered at that point. I think you're starting to see him get utilized a lot more in that Ravens offense. And if they're smart, they'll continue to up his targets, and that's going to be a guy that takes the league by storm next year. So that was my best start. Not great. Good, not great.
It counts. Chris, who'd you have, bud?
My best start award goes to the previously mentioned Amon-Ra St. Brown. I spoke enough about that. I want to talk more about my best ad because after telling everyone the week prior, don't listen to me if I tell you to add a Seahawk, avoid the Seahawks running game. And the very next week, I came back and I said, before the Houston Texans game, I said, add Rashad Penny. And that saved my season.
To beat Ted the next week.
That's cute. It's cute. Cinderella story, really. Love it. Love it. And then, Ted, you may or may not be on mute. Who was your best start this year?
You're muted.
And you only have one ear on, just so you know.
It's weird, eh?
It's like,
I'm a hot mess this episode.
Yes.
You sunk my battleship.
Oh man. So it was week 14. I was watching the Ravens play the Browns, and a former league MVP went out, only to bring in Tyler Huntley and watch him go off on Cleveland. And that was enough for me to see that Tyler Huntley has what it takes to at least go off for a game. So my start of the week was going to be Huntley. The very next week, and he ends up going off for like 40 points and 4 TDs. He was owned in 0.1% of leagues. So if you were a guy that had Jackson and you took my advice and you started Huntley, you were very satisfied and you were very, very likely to win your matchup that week. So I think that was probably my biggest start of the week. I think my best ad was way back on episode 2, week 4. I said, get your hands on Knox. Dawson Knox is going to be a decent guy for you this season. Stash him if you're one of those guys that you believe in. You have like a top tight end already on your roster. If not, this is a guy that you can probably play with. And it worked out in my league. He was a guy that I was able to move Andrews for, so I could get my hands on Madison and some handcuffs after picking up Cook. It didn't end up working out, but I did need Madison in that game, even though I didn't win. So the fact that you could be a guy that had 2 starting tight ends in your roster, if you picked up a Dawson Knox, you're in pretty good shape. So that would have been my best ad this year.
Yeah, that was a pretty good one. You were pretty high on him early, and every week I'm watching, like, man, he's just involved so much now. And now you're at a point where he's a guy you're going to be drafting next year. Not necessarily you, but many people. So, our next one, this will be nice and quick. Everybody, who was your worst start of the year? That thing ain't starting. That thing is not starting. It might start, maybe not. Chris, who was your worst start?
That goes to Sunshine, Trevor Lawrence. I had him on my sleepy start for week 9, going up against the Buffalo Bills. And he put up a whopping 5.12 points in that field goal snooze fest.
Ouch. I will go next. I told you in week 7 after a phenomenal game, I said, guys, get on the Mike White train. Get on that. And then the train just ended. That was it. It was a one and done. It went through the station, never came back through town. I'm very, very sorry for that one. And I own it. So Mike White, that was mine. Ted, who was your worst start this season?
My worst start this season would have been back in week 4. I told you, and it's the last time I'm going to do this, I told you to jump on the Kirk Cousins train and start him against the Browns for what I thought was going to be a good matchup for him and turn into a shootout. Turns out he ends up putting up, I think, 12.12 points, which would have been his worst point production since week 2 of 2020. So you're welcome. If you started Kirk Cousins because of me, you probably sucked. Sorry about that.
And Steve, who was your you had a few to choose from, as did I. But
I put in the doc, where do I even begin with this? Because I was the one who really went for those deep, ads and starts, not saying like, oh, pick up Najee Harris or pick up this guy that's going to start as running back for you named Dearness Johnson. And we all knew he was going to go off. So I was a little handcuffed here. I was on the Boston Scott train in week 12. He went off. I said, you never know what Philadelphia is going to be, but Miles Sanders has had his share of injury problems. They were going up against the New York Jets in week 13. I said, start Boston Scott, and you picked yourself up a bagel boy if you started Boston Scott. He got no points.
It was just the wrong week. That's all.
Yeah, wrong week, wrong time. Bad
Wrong
start.
player.
Wrong player. It was just fire.
our next category, this one, best advisor. So, because we're very good with English here. We did talk about this before the show without you, Jim, and it was clear that none of us were the best advisor. And after we had you on the show, it was quite clear that you were our best advisor this season. So I know you probably don't have a speech prepared, but we do thank you for bringing the most knowledge to this show twice in less than a month and a half. So thank you very much. Any words for our viewers?
I'm a special level of degenerate. I just have too much time on my hands. So yes, so that it probably is. Yeah, my weakness is my strength. So it's probably about right.
Perfect. Yeah, I mean, the main one for me that we asked, and Chris, you got the nice info on that. The DK Metcalf thing, I think, I had this question just stewing in my head for so long, and it just didn't make sense. And the way that you explained the shelves, all of a sudden I just started watching the Seahawks so differently because I understood it more. And then I just got frustrated that they still weren't utilizing him in a way that, even knowing what I knew at that point, you think, okay, well, maybe they do like some screens or like, check downs kind of thing. No.
Or just pepper him with targets. I watched the Titans game last week and watched Ryan Tannehill just pepper AJ Brown with targets. And I'm like, why don't the Seahawks do that with DK Metcalf? Same body type, same type of receiver. Like, why are they not just throwing the ball in his direction all the time?
Just force feed him.
Yeah.
And they're not even requiring route running on those. Those are mostly in breakers. Anybody could run those. And he's a big body, so he's going to knock over any defensive back. He can hold up with linebackers. But you see, Russell Wilson's kryptonite, we figured this out too. It's the intermediate part of the field. And that's where those crossers go. If you think back over the years, Russell Wilson's highlight plays were always him buying time and throwing deep. It was never him throwing in the middle of the field. And I don't know if that's a stature thing where he's shorter, seeing over the lineman. That could be an issue with that. But you notice he could get the balls quickly to the outsides or downfield, but he never really throws much to the middle.
Interesting.
I mean, if I'm the Seahawks, I'm just even if it's a wide receiver screen, if it like the guy's fast enough to, do jet sweeps, I'm just getting the ball into that guy's hand, because if you get him with like a little head of steam, even at the line of scrimmage, like you said, it's gonna go for 5 yards most likely. At the worst, he's gonna like take the first 2 defenders with him and at least get 5 yards. Like, you always want the ball in the hands of your biggest playmakers. No exception. Get DK the ball no matter what.
If they give DK Metcalf the jet sweep, how will Gerald Everett get his jet sweep?
There's not enough jet sweeps for everybody. Maybe they need
boy.
maybe those private jet sweeps. So, being that none of us could be eligible for best advisor, up next is the okayest advisor. And this one was tough. So I voted on this one. This was for me to decide. So I went over the doc for this entire season probably like 20 times. And I went over ads and I went over starts, and it was pretty close to start the season between definitely not me at all. I didn't even factor in maybe once just to throw my name in there to say I was.
When you said Najee Harris.
That was it. That was the time.
Yeah.
So Chris was in there for a little bit. Actually, it was pretty close, but really it came down to Ted and Steve for okayest advisor. And the ads were pretty close. Between the two. The starts actually ended up being pretty close too. But one guy only had a little bit better of a starting percentage that paid off. And that man is in his new home this week, folks. He's our 2021 okayest advisor. His name is Steve Fisher. Congratulations.
Guys,
Congratulations.
the worst.
I can't wait for my trophy to come in. I have a new home here, new office, looking for some hardware to add up into my cabinet that I don't have yet. Maybe I'll look cool like Jim's set up there, and it won't be so hodgepodge like a random book over one of my shoulders and stuff like that. So if you're looking for the most okayest advice, you can follow me, and I'll probably lose you half of your battles, but I'm going to win you that one odd battle that you might need.
You can buy in for week 10 every single season with Steve. That'll be the week that he wins you. I don't know if that's anything to brag about, but and then finally, this is the one we've all been waiting for. We couldn't get him on the show. I peppered his Instagram pretty much every single week since this man was eligible. But we do have this is the trophy. This is the award we've all been waiting for, folks. This is the Jody Fortson Trophy, the THNO MVP. Absolutely love it. He didn't even bother to see my Instagram messages. So it's just stuck in sent. I know. Just I peppered that man. I figured I know you have nothing else to do. You're not playing. You can't train. We publicly know that there isn't a whole lot going on in your world right now aside from rehab. So you got some time on the gram. You got some time to come on our show. I mean, Jim clearly knows what's up. So boys, let's get this. Steve, right back to you, considering you are our okayest advisor. Who was your THNO MVP this year?
I wasn't sure if I was allowed to pick him because we called it the Jody Fortson Memorial Award.
I love it.
The Memorial Award.
I just called it that now. But Jody Fortson was my overall THNO MVP, only because nobody had ever heard of this dude unless you were a Chiefs fan or some sort of freaky sports. I don't know. I'd never heard of him. He's poaching touchdowns from Travis Kelce. He's poaching touchdowns from Tyreek Hill. He's poaching touchdowns from Clyde Edwards-Helaire. And he didn't only do it once. He did it twice. And so for that reason, he is my Thanos. He's the first Thanos repeat player on here. And he went down way too early for us.
He was your Jacob Tammy.
He was my Jacob Tammy.
Jacob Tammy to me, oh man, that guy screwed me out of so many weeks. I'm telling you, at least 3. way back then. I will never forget. People don't forget. Tammy.
People don't forget.
People don't forget. Chris, who was your THNO MVP?
Yeah, this guy was actually probably the sleepy start of the year, I would say, from my good friend, Mr. Ted Wong. Down in the bottom corner there, saying to start Tyler Huntley was definitely the call of the year. Unfortunately, nobody listened to him Tyler Huntley was still only started in 0.1% of leagues on the NFL app anyways. So my Thanos with 40 points sitting on most people's waiver wire, not even benches, is Mr. Tyler Huntley.
And then he became a hero. Steve, you had a question from the Twitter.
Yeah, I had. Are you able to pull that up?
I do my best.
Why don't we let Ted do his Thanos while you pull the? Cause it involves a question for Jim, but it's a roster type question, so you kind of need to.
Do I have to show both here, both pictures?
I mean, it would be easier than
okay. Okay. Let me just share my screen here so that everybody.
We had somebody who's watching right now, a friend of our show, Jake Vogel, and he can't figure out how to ask a question on YouTube through his phone. So he DM'd me the question, and I've been there before on these guys' podcasts. I'm like, how come you guys can't see my question?
Mm-hmm. So is there a way to? Am I on the right one here?
Yeah. So there's his there.
Here we go. So who are the 1 to 2 pickups to win a championship this week? I find that in fantasy football playoffs, anyone can win. How much do each of you adjust in the deep playoffs? Do you play? These are a lot of questions. Do you play riskier or go status quo? I think we kind of answered that one. Thoughts on my recent lineup and any applause with the win with that lineup? I have 5 players on the IR in a league, blah, blah, blah. I don't think that matters too much there. So let's look. Basically, is there any starts that you're telling people this is his roster? Which one is he?
The one that won, I assume.
Yeah, I'm guessing the one with that one there.
Yeah, that would make sense. Sense.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I can zoom that in. Oh, I can. Look at this.
There you go.
So they have kickers and defenses, so clearly that league sucks.
I see his opponent started Matt Stafford as well. I wonder if he had Patrick Mahomes on the bench.
Oh, ouch.
Robinson, Kittle. Yeah, Kittle sucked for me this week too. Cooper Kupp obviously is amazing. So this is his roster going into the finals, Jim. I mean, I guess
there's 2 questions, right? Like the first one would be who are like 1 to 2 pickups this week specifically that could potentially win or at least help you win a fantasy football championship.
So obviously, looking at this, the only player he would look to start would be Craig Reynolds. Devontae Freeman seems to get enough done each week, and clearly there can't be too much more running backs on the waiver wire based on what he has, because Reynolds was a pickup. So that was a pickup. So instead of Reynolds, well, Keyshawn Vaughn does have a good chance this week because the Jets are number 32 against the run and the pass. The Bucs probably run out to a decent lead, and if they do, I think they want to make sure Ronald Jones is healthy in case they need him. So Vaughn could be the guy the entire second half against the worst run defense in the league. So I would look to replace Craig Reynolds because I do think DeAndre Swift plays this week.
Wow, there you go.
What about, I see like, I know we just talked about him earlier as a THNO, and Ogunbowale's numbers are jumping way up there. Is that a guy worth adding or what?
So here's the deal. Ogunbowale did have a very easy matchup last week. That worked well. Now, this week they're playing the Patriots. Very hard to run on them. Now, there is a hope for Ogunbowale. He's primarily a receiving back. Now, if you look at the DVOA numbers, the Patriots are like top 5 against everything except receiving backs. They're 28 or 29. So you can get to them in the receiving game and they very easily could be out 20 points in the second half. The Patriots could pull starters too. So Ogunbowale, there's a world where he gets 15 yards rushing and he catches 5 or 6 balls. That could happen. Remember, Jacksonville added Mekhi Sargent to their roster today. There's a very quiet signing, but he's a bigger interior back. I don't think they want Ogunbowale to run between the tackles. They had no choice last week. I think Mekhi Sargent steps right in and probably takes the majority of the early down carries.
I'm just going to show you. I'm just going to show you his bench because that was part of this. I apologize.
Oh, good.
That photo wasn't made available to me, Steve.
Look, I'm doing what they want me to do.
Okay, so there's his bench. Obviously, he's got some IR in there. He's got a few outs. Cam Akers. Now he's back. I'm looking at him coming off of IR, and it sucks that he did because I've got him on my IR as well. Well, I guess he's technically not on IR anymore, or a COVID list, whatever you want to call it, both. What would you say to people that have him? Like, I guess if let's say he's good to go for game time, do you throw him in or do you stick with somebody that's probably had a few more games to play already?
So yeah, I had to extrapolate this on SiriusXM this morning, and my thought was this. So they're playing the Ravens. The Ravens are lights out against the run. Top 3 run defense. They're very easy to pass on. My guess is they go into the pass-heavy game script. They haven't lately. They've been more balanced, but I think McVay has to realize it's a dead-end street. And we know how well Sony Michel's been playing. I think Akers, they give him 3 to 5 carries this week just to get some sea legs under him. And then next week, 5 to 8 carries if he holds up. I think their goal is to see what they have for the playoffs. They can't just put him in cold in a playoff game. So I think it's a maximum of 3 to 5 carries this week. And I don't think we can count on much from that.
Okay.
And like you said, like I think people have sort of forgotten about Sony Michel. Like I really just haven't heard his name be talked about much. And I mean, to start the year and for most of the year, he's really done nothing. I'm just looking at his numbers because even I was sleeping on him. Week 13, 121 yards and a touchdown. Week 14, 79 yards. Week 15, 92 plus another 23 in the air. Last week, 131 and a touchdown. Like he's been everything you want from a starting running back. So that's what I would be afraid of is, I mean, Ted, you know what it's like coming back from a torn Achilles. Why would you risk that guy right now when you have a guy who's playing absolutely lights out in Sony Michel?
Mm-hmm. And it's a guy that you acquired to be a member of your team throughout the season too, right? So there's I feel like Michel was a guy that was sitting on so many rosters throughout the course of the season, not even just the last few weeks, but the course of the season, who every time it came to making a random waiver wire ad for a guy that you possibly could start, the guy that people were looking at to possibly drop was a Sony Michel. So whoever managed to hang on to him for the majority of the season, still has him on his roster now, is obviously reaping the benefits. So you should go ahead and start a guy like Sony Michel.
I traded him for Kittle. I think it was week 8 or something. I needed a tight end. I can't remember who went down. Kyle made that trade. He's like, "Hey, I know you need tight end, and I could use a running back." And I was kind of using him. I had Connor and a couple other guys. I was doing okay at that point, but I needed a tight end to get me points. And Kittle, well, most weeks did that, not this past week. But so Sony Michel was definitely a guy that held his end of the bargain this season for sure. For sure. So I guess you kind of went over a start. So let's get into, we've got 2 more and then we can kind of wind her down. My MVP this year was Cordarrelle Patterson. He finally showed up. He was basically, it was one of those kind of, those trick plays that you can kind of pull on. You're like, well, it's kind of cool. You have a receiver, you got a running back. He's your better Dexter McCluster, basically. And throwback reference. He's your Tavon Austin. He's your. But I took a chance, and I'm thinking well, they do need to shore up that run game, and he ends up being easily one of the best backs this season. He was consistent week in, week out. He was able to pass catch. For me, he was my only choice. I mean, I didn't have a lot of great options to go with, but he definitely was the guy that he was a THNO, and then he just blew up. He just wasn't on that list ever again. He kind of went from zero to hero. So Mr. Cordarrelle Patterson would have been my THNO for the season.
He honestly made your team. He made you believe that your team was playoff ready. And
exactly. He was my bubble. He was my bubble player.
He was your bubble player who just toyed with you all season. You made all sorts of trades to, maybe if I just trade for this player, I'll get into the playoffs.
100%. 100%.
Not over the world's most okayest advisor over here.
Yeah, exactly. No, you're absolutely right, Steve. I had him. I mean, I had a good team, but I didn't have a great team. And the great teams are the ones that at the very least make the playoffs and then make a challenge to go a little bit deeper. I mean, it's been proven you can make the playoffs. Sometimes you can fluke out on that one matchup and it gets you in and you might have absolute dog crap to make it. But realistically, anybody that's been in fantasy playoffs, if you think you're going to go, you've got a good team to begin with. There's no real holes on that team. You're not usually needing to go really into your waiver wire, or you're rarely using your bench because your starters, aside from bye weeks, are getting the job done for you every week. Chris is hoping for that this week. But most years you don't have COVID, so this year has been so different. Jim, as you've said, like we have no idea what we have until basically the opening kickoff. Like you think you know everything, and all of a sudden, boom, guy's on the COVID list, and all of a sudden, he's one of your studs, and now you have nothing. And good luck adding somebody 2 minutes before kickoff. Maybe you're going to make your coffee, right? You know what? Lineups are set. I'm going to go make that coffee. Sit down for the early games. Boom, you find out like a guy like Julio Jones or whoever is out of nowhere. Like what? But I just set my line like 2 minutes ago.
See, so, I've learned my lesson to never ever go do the coffee or like acknowledge that my kids exist in the world until the games have started. The ones that get me last week, obviously I had I mentioned the garbage time Allen to Gabriel Davis, but I had Mike Evans and Leonard Fournette on my roster as guys who brought me there. And when they go out early, I'm like, man, I wasn't watching the games. I'm like, why are they not putting up more points? This is ridiculous. And I like pull up, random sports like TSN or the score. And I was like, oh, that's why they're out. Okay, well, I'm out of playoffs now. Perfect. That's great.
Yeah. Not even a snow game this year, hey? Like that's usually what gets me is a snow game. Not even that this year. I mean,
no hope when they go out.
Yeah. So anyway, and then finally, Ted, who was your THNO MVP for this season?
Yeah, so I didn't even know this until about halfway through our season that I had like a vibe going for picking my THNO every week, and it's not it's not the fullback TD, which was a cool thing. It's not the 1-1-1 guy like Steve's, like, which is also a rad thing. My thing ended up being the practice squad guys, the guys that came in out of nowhere who wouldn't have been added on people's rosters because they weren't even technically on rosters, for being really real here, right?
Yeah.
But my guy was Chris Moore, 27-year-old practice squad all-star. Had that huge week 5, goes 5 for 5, 109 yards and a TD for 17 points. I think instantly the next week after, he was added to the regular roster and they like legit signed him. But this guy's last TD was like in 2018 as a member of the Ravens. I think only Steve knows about Chris Moore, and he certainly wasn't adding him to anybody's roster. So that would be my guy. I think he put up a huge amount of points on a limited amount of work, and it really wasn't even a guy that you could add into your roster. So that'd be mine.
I like how everybody has a thing. For me, it's just what just felt awful. Just add THNO. Like you guys all have like Steve's like got this whole like algorithm of how it's all gonna figure out. Ted's kind of got a place where he can draw from. I'm just like, what looked the worst? That makes no sense. Okay, that's my guy. Chris, I'm not really sure what your method to your madness is. Pretty much the same, I think, right? Just like, somebody that shouldn't have had what they got. Yeah, so
I mean, it kind of makes sense of your method. I mean, the thing that looks odd and doesn't make sense. Look at you right now. You're wearing a mustache hat with a mustache blazer, sporting the world's worst mustache alive.
But would you expect anything? Would you expect anything else?
No, that's your niche. Like it makes a lot of sense. That's why you picked your THNOs on what looks the worst. Like that's.
I'm just glad that the mustache isn't frozen tonight. That picture was the worst thing I think I've ever seen on Twitter.
I've seen. I mean, it's probably not the worst thing. We've seen some pretty awful stuff. I won't get into what, but it was cold outside this week. I got to shovel my driveway, and I figured like people need to know that it gets cold in here. It wasn't boogers for the.
Yeah, because your mustache looked like that in the middle of August during a baseball game.
Yeah, there wasn't.
We weren't thinking it was boogers, just so you're like in the
but
joke.
People were saying
didn't think it was boogers.
People were calling me out, and I had to clarify. So, Jim, was there a guy this year for you that, I mean, clearly you're not looking for the absolute, worst in this league. That you have a little bit better things to do. But was there a guy that kind of stood out for you this year that shouldn't have stood out?
Reynolds, the running back from Craig Reynolds.
Craig?
Yes. And we learn over and over, right? Sometimes you just drop a running back in there And wow, the things that you think are not possible, they happen. And he did it for a couple of weeks in a row.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they almost like had to give him the chance, right? I mean, there was just so little going on there, and somebody did something that resembled good. And how can you do anything but give the guy the reins and just see if he can hang himself?
Exactly. And you guys mentioned earlier Patterson. This guy's been in the league like 9 years. Many coaches, Belichick had him for a while, and they couldn't figure out how to use this guy. All of a sudden, Arthur Smith, just get him downhill. He's strong, he's fast. He's not a complicated route runner. You just run him down the field, straight down. That's it. When they did that, now they're just using him as a running back. Downhill. That was always the answer.
Yeah, I always wonder, because obviously a freak, right? When we talk about Patterson, you're talking about like a football player, and like being a Browns guy, I remember when they finally found a way to use Josh Cribbs, and all I could think about was watching Patterson, thinking this guy's better than Cribbs is in every facet. So how can you not find a way to use Patterson? So it was pretty cool that they did finally get to see him unleashed this year.
And I'm sure you guys all saw the little video this week where I guess they had given a football to a Falcons fan. There was like a brother sister combo, and the brother got a football from, I don't think I saw the whole clip, but got a football, and it was the daughter that missed out, and she was kind of saying, he's like, well, what's wrong? Oh, she didn't get one. He goes, don't worry about it, I'll get her a ball. So it goes over like, hey, I need a ball. Gets hooked up, comes back, he goes, here you go. Instantly, like the greatest human being alive. Mom's almost crying. She's like, you have no idea. It's those simple things. They're in a position to give, to be on a pedestal, and there are a lot of guys that use that for good. I mean, even the whole Tom Brady, Mike Evans thing, that ended up working pretty well. Like, listen, man, we just want this ball back. We'll give you a bunch of other stuff. You got to trust us. We're going to take care of you. And they did. I mean, that's more of a glamorous example, but it is cool to see that those NFL players are still using their pedestals for good. Jim, thank you so much for coming back. We beyond appreciate you coming. I guess maybe a few final words from you. Like, if there's any final advice, we can just squeeze that last drop out of you of what we can expect. Maybe we're going for the first overall pick and we need to pick somebody up, or maybe it's just some sage advice for the guys that are in the championship round. Couple final words from yourself.
I just think it bears repeating. Just remember, the COVID list is a thing. And just because the player's on the list, he's isn't automatically coming off in 5 days. If he has symptoms and he's really sick, he's not going to be playing on Sunday. So set your waivers, back up as many useful players on that roster. I know it's a repeat, but it bears repeating because anything can happen this week. As we said earlier, it could happen as late as 2 hours before kickoff on Sunday. So just prepare for the worst and hope for the best.
Wow. Little words, much advice. We'll kick Ted out, or maybe Steve, and we'll just have Jim every week.
Nope.
Probably guys. Yeah, I'm the one with the least advice here. Perfect. Well, Jim, thanks again for coming to our championship finale show and awards show. You even came away with a little bit of hardware yourself, so we'll have to make sure we'll get you in. Obviously next season if that's at all possible. And we again appreciate you coming by. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. Good luck, everyone.
Thanks, Jim.
Okay, so it's down to 4 guys. I think it is time to wrap up. This has been a great season.
4 best friends that anyone could. Is that the?
Because we're the 4 best friends that you were on the right. You're on the.
100%.
And then my wolf pack went from, but now there were 3. How about that drive in? That was pretty fun. What a season, guys. Like, this show kind of came out of nowhere and it became, I think it was quite a success. So we actually are giving out fantasy football knowledge, which feels weird to say. I mean, you guys are. People are just asking me about like the obvious stuff. So by all means, everyone, next season, start Tom Brady. I think that's going to work out for you.
Can we see the tweet one more time?
I could probably pull that tweet up. Yeah. Look at that.
I just love the gift too. The more you know, because we've really had some good like one-liners on this show. Like it
BBHC.
Just really kind of, that one. I was thinking more Ted's like what was it? You.
The heart wants what the heart wants.
Heart wants what the heart wants, man. Every time I hear that now, I'm just like, I'm crying laughing.
So many things that have ruined us now. Absolutely. Like I said, I appreciate that you guys all came to this show. As I said, the THNO is the thing that binds us all together. It's a binding agent, if you will, of our football knowledges. And just drink it up. Just drink it up. This is
just lap it up.
Exactly. Yeah. It's the fantasy football smoothie of life. And oh man, I needed to get that in there somehow. That's what she said. But guys, this has been an absolutely great season. Chris, good luck to you this week. You've got Kayla in the final. She's won before, as of you.
She's tough. Yeah,
she won last year. Yeah,
that's right. So this is going to be. There's a small part of me that does want her to win because then I don't have to go and drive pick up the trophy. I'm quite lazy. At the same time, I would like it to make another appearance or an appearance on this show because it hasn't been shown, and we'll show off that trophy if at all possible.
Well, I'll show it off already.
Well, actually, we should get Kayla on anyways, win or lose.
I think that's a good idea. That's a good idea.
All of us put together. Clearly.
Definitely. Well, she has a pretty stacked roster to begin with. She did last year too.
That doesn't mean shit.
Well, I think it means enough. Yeah,
it means that she's smarter than us.
It means enough.
Hey, let me tell you, you can fuck up a stacked roster.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah, by starting Matthew Stafford.
Yeah, you start the number 5 rated QB over the number 6 for QB. That's your fault.
Jeez, boys. I guess I don't know. Maybe we'll do a Super Bowl one if there's any reason to do that. But other than this, you guys, thank you for a wonderful season of hijinks and hilarity. And good luck to if you got anything else going. I am pretty much out of every other league, so I'm just shooting for those first round picks wherever I got them. And on behalf, I guess, of Chris and Steve from the BallHawks podcast, make sure you guys follow their show. They did a nice Monday one this week, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. They had Pilot Pete from The Bachelor and Bachelorette on one of their previous episodes. Great episode. Go listen, watch that one. Actually, really good show.
Funny guy.
Yeah. It's nice to have another guy that's knowledgeable about football, and he's in a higher place than all of us are. He's on TV.
Nice fun there, higher place.
Yeah. Hey, I'm on the internet.
Yeah, but he's on TV.
The deep dark corners of the internet.
Yeah,
you're on the line.
Yeah, you're on the line. The interwebs. Myself, Ryan, and Ted from the PP1 podcast. We will be back on our show, I think, next week because there's been no hockey, so why bother? Other than that helps no one. The FantasyCast, our championship finale and award show with our good buddy Jim Coventry. We thank you all for watching, for listening.